All right. So I want to talk about something that I think is just an interesting problem to sort of illustrate the complexity of a lot of different things. I'm going to talk about financial returns. It's like seems super boring, but it's actually not. I think it's fascinating. I think it's just like a topic to think about in terms of financial returns of what you actually make on something, right? So it's basically how much money did you actually make on this thing? Seems like a really easy question to ask, right? In terms of financial returns and figuring it out. So you're going to have to apologize. I'm eating a banana right now. And I'm also in the car, so I can't I'm not looking at the phone or anything like that. So it's on hands-free. But calculating financial return seems pretty easy, right? Like it's basically how much you made, the difference of what you actually have right now or what the thing is valued at, however you evaluate this particular thing, subtracting how much you actually put into it. And that gives you the difference of basically how much you made, or that gets you how much you made. And then you divide it by how much you actually put into it. And that will give you some sort of number. And the reason why I'm talking about this is I was trying to figure out my financial return. We have some money invested in, I do not do anything other than, I'm investing in the Reciprocity Project because I believe in this thing. I think it's really important. So you can look at it. But the only thing that I invest in other than that, or we invest in, my wife and I, is S&P 500 index funds. And then we also have mutual funds through work, right? But I was trying to figure out, like, how much is the S&P 500 index funds were worth yesterday. We had to take some money out. What we're doing is we saved up. We're going to I'm going to buy a new Tesla. And I'm super excited about this thing. So we actually had some money in investments, and I wanted to take out this money to to pay for this thing. So hopefully in June I'll be getting a new Tesla. That's what the app says. So I'm excited about this. It's fun. I've never bought a really expensive car. So the car I'm driving around in right now, my first car that I had was a Sable, a Mercury Sable. It was my parents' Mercury Sable, and it was like 12 years old. Sold it for $800 after that. I had it for 2 years. Then I had a Honda Civic. We had that for 10 years, driving around, bombing around in that thing. And then I've got this Mazda right now. So now it's 12, the Mazda CX-7. I'm going to upgrade to my first fancy car. And I'm very excited about it. So it's a Tesla, and I was trying to figure out, like, how much did we actually make on our savings in terms of saving for this thing. And what we do and what I preach, the only thing that is sound, except for now, government bonds. Some of the government bonds are actually doing okay because the way that inflation is, it's kind of weirdo. But for most of the part, I just do S&P 500 index funds. That's all I invest in. That's the most appropriate thing. Why? There's a whole bunch of finance literature on this. Is that you're accounting for as much available information as you possibly can in the market, and it's going to be your best return always. That's basically what all the financial literature says. People that study this stuff far smarter than I am, and smarter than you are. And that's basically all I say. Is just invest in S&P 500 index funds. Investing personal finance is actually really not that exciting, in the sense of, like, buying stocks and doing it. Like, the way that we teach finance is garbage. Most of the people that sort of study this stuff will tell you that up front. It's absolute garbage. The people that looked at this, and it's the leading figures from University of Chicago, Fema and French, basically just say invest in index funds. And John Bogle, who created Vanguard Funds, the world's largest mutual fund company now, that's all he does. That's how Vanguard made their money. It's just index funds. So so that's all I invest in. I was trying to figure out, like, how much money did I make on these investments? And it's bloody hard to figure out, right? Like, it seems simple, like how much you put in, how much you get back. But if you're doing it properly, you should be sort of, as you're making extra money, you're just dumping it in, right? Like, so over the course of, several years, you're dumping money in. And then, so what happens is then you have to sort of figure out from the first time you put money in, you have to figure out the return is on that money that you put in, because you're constantly increasing the amount of money that you put in. It's not that you put in one fixed amount. You're constantly putting in money. So what you're looking for me, is looking at the return on what was the money that I actually put in several years ago in terms of the return that I actually got. And that's a hard thing to figure out. It's not what money you put in and how much you actually get out that's going to give you like a completely wrong picture on your investment portfolio, particularly in these downward times that we're having right now. What you need to sort of look at is the equivalent money that you put in years ago and what it's actually worth today. And that's a hard calculation. You actually have to do some thought in terms of, okay, I bought this at this amount, and you have to look up what it was and how much you actually bought, and then figured out what the actual return was. And we get sort of we get all goofed up when we see these like news things that the market is going down and the market's going up, and honestly, it doesn't matter. And if you're doing it properly, it's a long run play. You're never looking at the short term. And yes, yesterday I was trying to game it a little bit. So I bought at the end of the day. I don't know. But, maybe it made me an extra $100 or something like that to do that. But, the tricky thing is not getting into like it goes up and goes down, because it's very hard to calculate how much your worth is going up and going down, because of the fact that you're buying incrementally all the time. And so you need to actually sort of add up all those moments. You need to actually calculate. So let's say you put in $100 5 years ago. What you need to do is look at the price of what it was for the $100 5 years ago and $100 in index funds, and then look to see at what you sold it for, that $100 of stocks today. And then you have to do that incrementally, as you are, for every time that you actually do that. And there's no system that does that. You have to do it manually, and it is, very onerous task, and nobody's ever going to do that. I'm not going to sit down and actually do that, but I was trying to figure out, okay, what was the actual return that I got on this investment? And it's not clear in terms of what you get, because what you get, or what people sort of assume, is how much you actually put in compared to how much you actually got out. But that's not the case when you're looking at this over time, because you're constantly investing. And then you have to figure out, okay, how much was it back in the day compared to how much I got now? And that's a far different calculation than how much total you put in, compared to how much you actually have right now. Because, I'm going to be honest, we put in some money this year, right, in the last year. And, because we did that, we actually lost on that money this year. But we had also put in money from years ago, and we gained from that, right? So we have to figure out, like, what does that actually mean, and sort of figure out, like, the reason why I'm saying this is you need to sort of make sense. What is the emotional decision that you're making from this financial calculation, right? So part of me is like, oh man, I lost, we're sucking at this time. But that is not the case, right? What I should be looking at is that sort of partialed out portion of what I invested in, or what we invested in years ago, and seeing how much we actually gained right now. So yes, the stuff we invested in this year sucked. Total, like, bad investment. Whatever. Everything's a bad investment right now. And so I'm going to continue. We're going to continue to keep putting, money in like this all the time, because you go up, you go down, right? And so you have to sort of think about it in that way. So instead of thinking of this, man, I sucked, we shouldn't invest again, we got burnt and all that kind of stuff, that's not what you should be thinking about. In fact, we did pretty well. I should figure out what the actual calculation is on it, but we did pretty well in terms of when we bought and when we sold on this, even though that the market is down right now. So in the last year, all of that money that we put in, total loss. But the money that we put in from a few years ago, actually, it's not bad. And so we did okay, right? And it's better than what the alternative was, which was putting money in a savings account. That really sucks. The savings accounts right now just suck. But I'm expecting them to actually eke up a fair bit, given what's going on with interest rates going up. So hopefully that will change a little bit, and maybe you'll get a couple percent. And that's all I'm looking for with anything that's sort of short term like this. I'm not looking for, I made 10% per year, which is what the average is, right? Like what I'm looking at, did I beat in the last couple of years, did I beat the 1% or 2%? And if that's the case, actually at 0% was a savings rate forever. For most, savings accounts. If I beat that, even just by a few percentage, right? I beat it by 2%, 3%. That's still pretty good. Now it's risky. It's a little more riskier than the savings account, obviously, but that's better than what we would have got otherwise. And framing these and thinking about your financial decisions is so important. Financial decisions are not financial. They're not like a number thing. It is so not a number thing. It is absolutely an emotional decision. It's about life. It's about what you're doing. And so you have to get over that emotional stuff. So you have to think about it properly in terms of what are you actually doing here. So part of me yesterday, when I was selling this, so I was selling some of these index funds because we're getting this car in June. So the reason why I'm doing it now is that it takes a week to clear, and then I got to transfer it to different accounts and stuff like that. So it takes time. So I want it just sitting in the account so that it's, we're ready for it, right? So I can buy something. And, I'm giving plenty of time for it to, do its thing and that kind of stuff. So what we have to think about is not get caught up in the emotional place of it, not listen to the news. The news is going to drive you nuts, the financial news, but just look at what's going on day in and day out with what you're doing. But it's not day in and day out. It's more like, year in and year out. And the other thing to think about, right? So I'm using index funds as kind of a long-term savings account. So at any given time, I'm going to put money into it, right? And when I take money out, we might take money out of these index funds at any time. At any given time, it could be a complete loss. But the benefit of actually doing this is over the course of 30 to 40 years, you actually accumulate wealth, right? Like you're benefiting from all of the upsides. So some years you're going to lose, right? And you're going to be like, crap, I lost. But other years, on average, as long as you keep some money in those index funds, on average, you're actually going to benefit from this. And it's really hard to figure out how much you're going to benefit from it, but on average, you're going to benefit, right? So you have to think about that. As long as you're keeping money in there and constantly reinvesting and taking out when you need it, you shouldn't necessarily worry about the ups and downs, although it's hard not to, and that's where the emotional part comes in. That's where you have to sort of think about what it is that you're actually doing. So remember that when you're going through your investments and thinking about, investment returns and doing those kind of things and sort of financially doing the stuff. Don't get caught up in the emotional part of it. Don't listen to the news that it's down so much, that stock market's down so much this week or this quarter or whatever. You're not looking at the big picture. They never tell you the big picture. You have to look at the big picture to realize, oh crap, it's actually up a ton over the last few years. And that's what you want. And that's what you're playing. You're not betting on the short term. That's nonsense. You're going to get hurt. If you're trying to do any short-term stuff where you're putting money in, taking it out right away, all of that sort of day trading or even quarterly trading, putting it in, putting it out, like that's garbage. You're going to get burned. But, if you do this long-term play where you're sitting there and you're investing over the course of a long time and you're using, index funds or something that is a little more risky as a longer term play, right? Like a medium term play, but you're always having some money in it. I think you actually end up benefiting in the long run. It would have to be very independent in terms of, making that decision, but that's what you're looking at. Is it's a moderate to long-term play to do this stuff. And as long as you keep doing those actions over the course of 65 or 30 years or 40 years until you're, 65 or 70 years old, you actually start benefiting from it over the long run. It just takes a long time. So don't ever get stuck in that mindset as like, man, this is sucking. Yes, it is. But you have to get over it and stop making emotional decisions. How do you stop making emotional decisions? Start breaking it down and looking to see what you actually do and what is actually going on. So it's makes sense, and it's a medium to long run play with it, right? So medium being, anywhere basically like 5 years. Anything less than anything risky. What could happen, but in general, anywhere in five years. Even if you do, think, oh, the next time I do this, it's actually going to benefit, and you have to get over that of the man, this sucked right now, and get into the benefit of this is actually quite amazing, and that's really what you have to think about. Now, sorry, I'm eating a banana. Now you notice I do not mention anything that's super risky in any of this, right? The riskiest thing is index funds, which, most people that play in this arena are like, you're really boring. Yes, I'm really boring. And that's will not tell you ever to invest in Walmart. I will never, ever tell you to just invest in Xerox. I will never, ever tell you just to invest in Google. I'll never tell you, especially to invest in Bitcoin and ICOs and all the new financial technology that's coming out. Well, why is that? Why is that a bad idea? The reason is that it's extremely risky to do this. And so the only time that I would invest, so you got to think in proportions, right? Like how much of that risk that you should be actually paying or that you should be, handling, right? Like you should bear. So what you should think about is, okay, so super high risk, securities and those kind of things, that might be okay, but it should be only a tiny, tiny fraction, right? So I personally recommend like 1% or less of super high risky things or high risk things, assets. So Bitcoin and whatever. So for the average person, like what is 1% of whatever you make, right? Like say you make $1,000 or you make $100,000 a year, which is actually a pretty big, good salary. You take $1,000 of that, invest in high risk assets. That's it. Like it should not feel at all ever that you're investing more than, like for the average person is more than like maybe it's $500 or $1,000 a year in these crazy high risk things. And even still, they're just very risky. There's a lot of uncertainty that happens, and many people, the reason why I don't like them is because you're likely to get burnt. And when you get burnt, you're going to have that emotional reaction. You're not going to want to do this stuff again. So the best thing that you could do is play right in the middle. Do what basically all of the finance profs and stuff. So I did a double major in my PhD. It was really close to getting a double major in finance and strategy at the time. I just didn't finish my comprehensive exams. I think I had one more course to do, and I didn't do it in finance. But that the literature at the time, so maybe it's changed. This was 10 years ago. Literature at the time is you cannot beat index funds. It's super hard to do. The only reason you're beating them, if you have better returns, is you're more risky than everybody else. And so you have to manage that risk, right? If you're crazy risky, right, and you just put all your money into Bitcoin and all this, or just all your money into Walmart, which is crazy risky, you're nuts. Or all your money into Publix, you're crazy risky, you're nuts. To do that, you're going to get burnt. And the reason is you're putting in a lot of risk. You're placing a lot of your trust in a couple of individuals that, in a given year, I mean, people are nuts. I'm going to tell you that. Like, people are just genuinely nuts. And, the CEO of Publix, I don't know who it is, and I don't care at this moment. If the CEO of Publix did something crazy and destroyed some value, you're going to get burnt. So, realize that you have to be democratic with the money that you actually have, and think about how you can sort of spread it out across as many people or many assets as possible. So thanks so much for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit from this. Denny's, Dropping Pinnacles, Ishmael, Ryan, Marvela, Samantha, Michael, Cecilia, Jack, Jade, Mark, Yolanda, Kiram, Michael, Jennifer, and Rayanne. Thanks so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. And have a good day. Enjoy the beautiful spring weather. All right, take care. Bye.